Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. Sudan's army has recaptured the presidential palace in the centre of Khartoum from the Rapid Support Forces. Flights will restart at Heathrow Airport after a major power outage forced it to shut down, delaying thousands of passengers around the world. And Disney's remake of Snow White hits movie theatres surrounded in controversy. Our top story, Sudan's army has recaptured the presidential palace in the centre of Khartoum from the Rapid Support Forces. State television has broadcast scenes of fighters celebrating in what's been described as a pivotal moment in the two-year civil war. We can see the pictures of that right now on our screens. And I'm happy to say we are now joined by our Middle East security analyst, Dr. Riad Kahwaji. Good evening to you, Dr. Kahwaji. Thank you so much for joining me. First of all, this conflict has been going on for 2 years. This has been described as a real key moment. Can you tell us why?
In such conflicts and such regimes, the control of the capital, especially the presidential palace, is extremely symbolic. It is seen as the center of gravity in the country. Who controls a city, especially the seat of power, symbolically to the people, he is now the actual ruler. He has the legitimate right to be in there. So in this long conflict, now we've seen the Sudanese armed forces make this steady progress over the past few weeks, and now they have managed to sack the capital and gain complete control of it and evict the RSF forces. So this is a significant move.
As you say, a significant moment, but despite the Sudan army claiming this victory, Riad, the RSF says the battle for the palace is not over. So what is the situation on the ground? Is it complex still?
So they have evicted these troops from the city, the RSF fighters, but the RSF still control vast territory in the country. They are still in Darfur, they are on Kordofan, which is borders the capital. So the possibility of making a counterattack is still high. So we need to see and make sure that the armed forces or the Sudanese army will be able to retain control and drive the RSF forces further away from the capital and keep the momentum of the offensive, capturing more territory, especially in the south and the western part of the country, which is the stronghold of the RSF.
This conflict is causing the world's largest humanitarian crisis. What are the living situations now in Sudan for people?
Oh, it is dire. It's one of the worst. The UN describes it as one of the worst disasters they have at their hand today. You're talking about nearly 9 million people displaced as a result of this war. Number of casualties estimated to be in the range of 150,000. A lot of people injured, a lot of people missing. There were atrocities committed, genocide. It's been one of the worst disasters that has been recorded, especially in 2023, 2024 by the UN, and it's still going on.
Middle East security analyst Dr. Riad Kahwaji, it's always great having you in the studio. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can now join our correspondent Naba Mohiedeen in Port Sudan. Thank you so much for joining me. First of all, what's the latest there? Apologies, we're having a few technical issues. We hope we can go back to Naba in Port Sudan when we get up that line. So that's our correspondent who was meant to join us, just discussing the latest on the situation in Sudan. A statement released by Heathrow Airport says flights will restart later today and that it's hoped to run a full operation tomorrow. It comes after it was forced to shut down after 2 explosions and a fire at a nearby electricity substation wiped out its power. Thousands of flights had to be cancelled, causing travel chaos for tens of thousands of passengers around the world. Counter-terror police are leading the investigation into the fire. For more on this, I'm pleased to say I'm joined by travel journalist and broadcaster Simon Calder. Simon, thank you so much for joining me. So this unprecedented incident is still causing absolute chaos, but flights are restarting now. Seems to be a positive development.
Yes, it's been an appalling day at the busiest airport in Europe. What we have seen is a huge number of flights, over 1,300, containing, or should have been containing, about 250,000 people, just all cancelled. Now, in the past few minutes, operations have begun once again at London Heathrow, but this is entirely moving aircraft back from the various places around Europe that they have been diverted to first thing this morning, and we will get 8 flights leaving the UK tonight, including to Riad, to Cape Town, to Johannesburg, to Buenos Aires, and to Sydney via Singapore. It does leave, though, the huge problem of getting aircraft, pilots, cabin crew and passengers back into their positions, which I'm afraid is going to be a difficult business because there's very, very little slack in the system at London Heathrow. It's pretty much full to capacity at all times.
Simon, airlines are really questioning how such crucial infrastructure could fail. Do we know any more about how this might have happened?
Well, look, it's very, very difficult to say why there was an apparent single point of failure in the electricity supply. Of course, Heathrow, being such a huge airport, is rather like a small city in terms of the amount of power that it draws from the electricity grid. But one would have imagined that there would be many ways of routing electricity into the airport without having to shut down everything. Initially, we were told that this was going to be going on for another 7 hours until midnight UK time. It's good to see that that hasn't happened. I understand that 2 of the terminals, 3 and 5, are now back in operation, but people are being told, do not go to the airport because we don't know if your flight is going to be unless you know for certain your flight is going to be operating. And the vast majority of them on British Airways, on Virgin Atlantic, on Lufthansa and all the other airlines are cancelled today.
Simon, what can people do who are actually stranded? We know it's not just people in the UK, but it's around the whole world, because obviously you transfer through certain airports to Heathrow. It must be such a sticky, difficult situation also for these airlines to keep control of.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's almost impossible. In Europe, there are very strong passenger rights, which means that anybody booked on British Airways, for instance, is able to demand that they are rebooked on another flight as soon as possible. But the problem is there simply aren't the seats available. Once flights restart, and there's hoping to be a near normal operation tomorrow in and out of London Heathrow, then it's people who are already booked on those flights who take priority, and everybody else just has to scrabble for the few remaining seats. It's heartbreaking for so many people who may be heading off on the vacation of a lifetime, going to a family wedding, an important business trip, and they've just seen their travel plans torn up.
Absolutely, Simon Calder. Thank you so much for joining me. Much appreciated. Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has told the military to seize additional areas in Gaza. He's also said that the military would continue its ground operation in Gaza with increasing intensity until all the hostages, both living and dead, were returned by Hamas. Protesters in Turkey have continued for a second night following the arrest of Istanbul Mayor Erkam İmamoğlu. That's despite a 4-day protest ban being in place. İmamoğlu is a key rival to Turkish President Erdogan and was set to be named a presidential candidate for 2028. Erdogan has said Turkey won't surrender to street terror. Now, over 40 men are accusing the former CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch of rape, sexual assault or drugging. Mike Jeffries was charged with sex trafficking in October. He's now facing multiple lawsuits claiming he assaulted men under the disguise of modelling opportunities. The former chief has denied the claims that go as far back as the 90s. And finally, some users of TikTok are asking for the chubby filter to be banned from the social media platform. It uses artificial intelligence to alter pictures and make people look like they've put on weight. Some users believe that it is a form of body shaming. Meanwhile, experts have also warned the filter could fuel a toxic diet culture online. In the last hour, US President Donald Trump has been addressing reporters in the Oval Office, saying there'll be flexibility on tariffs and America can't be expected to carry Canada, reiterating it should become the 51st state. Meanwhile, he's also signed an executive order aimed at starting the process of dismantling the Department of Education. The latest move by the president has pleased many Republicans, but it has also concerned many parents. And there's been a very public and ongoing spat over whether the White House deliberately ignored a judge's order when it came to a Venezuelan deportation flight. Well, it's just another week in Trump's America. Correspondent Sarah Firth breaks it down for us.
Another day, another executive order from US President Donald Trump, this time taking aim at the Department of Education, with the order starting the process to essentially dismantle the Federal Department of Education. The order could leave school policy almost entirely in the hands of states and local boards.
But we're going to be returning education very simply back to the states where it belongs, and this is a very popular thing to do, but much more importantly, it's a common sense thing to do, and it's going to work. Absolutely, it's going to work.
It's a campaign promise the president ran on, and a long-standing conservative goal. So, a thumbs up from many. But educators across the country say the writing is on the wall, that this will directly impact minority children and children from lower income families.
For many of my students, there's already a feeling that nobody cares about me, that I'm responsible for myself, like nobody gives a beep about me. And I think that this very much would affirm that for them. I think that it also would cause them to say, well, why is it that I am not important enough just because I happen to be brown, just because I happen to be a minority, just because I happen to be low income? Why should I have less than because of choices that other people made? Kids who are from families that are low income, the children did not choose to be low income.
Kindergarten teacher Lisa Morgan says if the Department of Education goes, someone else will have to administer the funds. And without the skills and expertise needed, things could begin falling through the cracks.
So that guardrail to ensure that we are fulfilling the promise that every single child has the right to a free and appropriate public education. That guardrail is gone, and it is always going to be concerning that that's missing.
The president doesn't have the standing to close the Department of Education. That would require an act of Congress, but it certainly begins the process and has left many parents across America wondering what this new direction will mean for their children. It's not the only upheaval of the week, not even close. An ongoing dispute over whether the president ignored a court order over the deportations of people accused of being part of a Venezuelan gang is escalating.
I think it's pretty clear that the courts can't second guess whether there's an invasion and whether the president has cause to remove someone. But the courts may have some role to decide if a particular person is actually affiliated with that alien enemy. In other words, would a person be a member of this Venezuelan gang, or maybe they're not? So I think the courts have asserted some power. What's sort of unique that happened here was that the judge ruled that planes had to be turned around mid-air.
Some are going further in describing this unique situation.
In my view, we are already in a constitutional crisis.
A judge in the case has extended the deadline for the Trump administration to provide a sworn declaration from a cabinet official about the executive branch actions. From an alleged constitutional crisis to a potential educational one. It's just another week in Trump's America, where, for better or worse, he's keeping promises he made during his campaign and enacting change fast. Sarah Firth, Al Arabiya News, Washington, D.C.
Now, the action remake of the classic Disney film Snow White hits movie theatres today, but the film has faced a number of controversies that could potentially threaten its performance at the box office. It's faced political issues, cultural wars, and had poor reviews by movie critics. For more on this, I'm pleased to say I'm joined by entertainment reporter Stephanie Takyi. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me. This film was hoping to ride the wave of some other classic movies that have been remade recently, but has really faced a number of controversies, one being about the dwarves in the movie. Is there any more you can tell us?
Yes, indeed, Leigh Ann. This remake has attracted an avalanche of controversy, mainly primarily to do with the dwarfs. It's in the title. The classic film that came out in 1937 was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which initially was the working title for this film. But Peter Dinklage, who's a Hollywood actor who suffers from dwarfism, came out and attacked Disney and said, this film is going to be backwards, depicting the seven dwarfs living in a cave. How can Disney say you guys are progressive and still depicting the seven dwarves in this way? So Disney consulted with the dwarfism community as they wanted to not redefine stereotypes of people who suffer from dwarfism. So instead, what they've done now, they've gone to the extreme now, Leigh Ann, and they've changed the title to Snow White and the Magical Creatures, and also they've actually got rid of all the human dwarfs, and now they've introduced all these CGI animated magical creatures. As you can imagine, for actors who are in the dwarfism community, the roles they get are very far and few. And for a beloved Disney title such as this to now be alienated and hasn't gone down well.
Yes, indeed, Stephanie. And its two main stars' views on the Israel-Palestinian war have also been a major issue.
Yeah, Leigh Ann, I know actors love to be political, but when it comes to promotion and when it comes to production, most Hollywood houses would like the politics to be left out of it. But here we have two of its main stars, Gal Gadot, who plays the evil queen. She actually previously served in the IDF, and she's been quite vocal about Hamas releasing Israeli hostages. While on the other side now, we have Rachel Zelger, who's been quite pro-Palestine, and she's been quite vocal about her support for Palestine. And what's happened here, there's been a lot of news stories which I've covered that apparently the two have been feuding over their political alliances. And, you know, what we've seen so far in the very few premieres that they've had, we haven't seen that general love and warmth between the two.
And the casting of Zegler as Snow White has also caused some racist backlash for the star herself. How has she reacted to this?
Well, she was quite fierce about this because, you know, we know the tagline Snow White is supposed to be the fairest of them all. And what Disney has done is they've casted a woman who is of Colombian and Polish descent. So your diehard Disney fans were not happy about that. But, you know, kudos to Rachel. She stood her ground and said, this is not going to be the Snow White of 1937. This is not a woman who's waiting to be saved by a prince. She's going to be quite modern day. And from what I've read so far, she's actually done a pretty good performance and she's stood her ground amid all of this controversy.
And she's got an absolutely beautiful voice. It's not come cheap either, with a budget estimated at $270 million. It's huge sums. How's it actually expected to do at the box office? Because as you mentioned, the original one that came out in 1937, I feel like we all know that. So would people want to go and see a remake, do you think?
Well, money talks in this day and age for Disney. And, you know, they did spend that amount. And so far, in previews alone, they've made $3.5 million. And that's just from yesterday. So this weekend, Leigh Ann, it's predicted that they may make $100 million worldwide for this launch. This is really low compared to other Disney remakes like Little Mermaid, which opens with $95 million alone in previews. So there's a lot riding on this film financially. But what happens with controversial films like this, curiosity always kills the cat. And I think quite a few people will, even though they don't support the message of the new film, they'll be interesting to see what happens in it.
Yes, absolutely. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? I think it's Stephanie Takyi, our entertainment reporter. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Leigh Ann.
Pleasure. Let's take a look at the top business news. US President Donald Trump has invoked emergency powers to expand domestic production of critical minerals. This comes as he tries to reduce US reliance on imports from countries like China as the trade war escalates. The executive order instructs government agencies to prioritize mining projects as well as providing technical and financial support to boost critical mineral production. Staying in the US, Attorney General Pam Bondi says that 3 people accused of vandalism targeting Elon Musk's Tesla electrical vehicle company could face up to 20 years in prison. Bondi said the damage to Tesla cars, dealerships and charging stations was domestic terrorism. Arrests and charges against the 3 suspects were previously announced by prosecutors. Turning to all the sports news now, Lewis Hamilton took his first pole position for Ferrari as he headed sprint qualifying for the Chinese Grand Prix. Hamilton beat Red Bull's Max Verstappen around the Shanghai circuit and will start Saturday's sprint race from the front. This is actually his first sprint race pole, and he has never won any of the previous 16 sprint races. And England head coach Thomas Tuchel has dropped 3 players from Friday's World Cup qualifier against Albania at Wembley. Morgan Gibbs-White, Gerald Kinwash and Aaron Ramsdale have not been selected as UEFA rules state that a manager can only select 23 players in his first squad for the fixture. Harry Kane will be the captain of the side, while Jude Bellingham and Declan Rice are expected to start in midfield. A reminder of our top stories. Sudan's army has recaptured the presidential palace in the centre of Khartoum from the Rapid Support Forces. Flights will restart at Heathrow Airport after a major power outage forced it to shut down, delaying thousands of passengers around the world. And Disney's remake of Snow White hits movie theatres surrounded in controversy. And that's all from us on W News. Thank you so much for joining us. The dressing room is coming up next. And of course, don't miss Tom Burgess Watson with GNT. Good night and happy Friday.